Good evening and welcome. You're watching a very special edition of the News Track, and it's special because our heroes from Ukraine are back. Over the last 1 month, the entire country has been riveted to India Today's coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And over the next 40 minutes, my special guest on this broadcast, Gaurav Sawant, back from the battlefield. We've got Geeta Mohan, our foreign affairs editor, joining us. She insisted she had to be out for the biggest story on her beat, and which is what she did. We've got the men behind the camera, video journalist Pawan joining us. This was his first war experience. He'll tell us all about it. Mohan's been to a few war zones and conflict situations. And last but not least, our superstar anchor from Aaj Tak, Shweta Singh. So welcome. And we have a very special young guest, Gaurav's daughter Vidushi. And she's been very, very anxious, very, very stressed about her father and father's comeback. We'll talk to Vidushi as well. So welcome, Vidushi. Here's a look at our top focus tonight.
From the break of war,
this is Mariupol. You hear a series. Hear this sound.
through the debris and devastation.
You can hear more blasts that are taking place. We are moving away from this area. We are being told to leave this area because it's not safe to be here. You can hear some blasts that are taking place.
Please close the sky.
Close the sky. That's the message.
Over the roar of war machines.
We're very careful, Pawan, very careful. These are anti-tank mines that are laid on the road here.
Continuous firing taking place.
No compromise, no half measures.
उन्होंने हमारे ऊपर हथियार तान के रखा है.
This is one of the frontline areas where trenches have been dug up, bunkers have been set. They're all prepared, all set to take on the Russian forces.
Now they are back.
Hello, son.
The world watched the Ukraine war only on India Today.
Over the past 20 plus days, every single person in the newsroom has had innumerable messages, calls. How's Gaurav? How's Shweta? How's Geeta? How's Mohan? How's Pawan? We'll tell you what it really was covering this war, which is still on. They'll narrate their experiences, and I'm sure those are stories you've been wondering about, and we'll hear them in just a moment. Here are the headlines we're tracking tonight. On day 22 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a theatre serving as a shelter is bombarded in Kharkiv. Capital Kiev witnesses a barrage of rocket strikes. UN court orders Russia to stop the war. Zelensky says that the International Court of Justice order is a massive victory for his country. Russia and Ukraine zero in on a 15-point peace plan. Yogi Adityanath returns to his Karm Bhumi after winning his first assembly election from Gorakhpur. Will celebrate Holi in his constituency. Radical PFI group declares Hijab Fight 2.0 in Karnataka. Observes a complete shutdown in several districts. Udupi College vice principal and BJP leader calls hijab petitioners terrorists. Aam Aadmi Party spins a googly, picks cricketer Harbhajan Singh for their Rajya Sabha nomination. Party set to get 5 MPs by the end of March. So we've got Gaurav Sawant, Geeta Mohan, Shweta Singh with us in the studio, as also our video journalists Pawan and Mohan. And before I talk to them, I just want to show you what happened on the battlefield on day 22 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. An effort to try and work out a rapprochement, a peace plan, still in the works. And in just a moment, we'll get our team from Ukraine to start talking about what covering the war over the past month was like for them. But here is our battlefield dispatch.
Markets on fire. Schools shelled. Back-to-back strikes. Ukraine continues to face the unsparing onslaught by Putin's army. As Russia continues its invasion, there's bloodbath in the streets of Kyiv, Kharkiv, Mariupol, and many other cities and towns spread across Ukraine. The second biggest city of Kharkiv paints a picture of destruction. Airstrikes that rocked marketplaces left buildings on fire, smoldering and charred. The relentless attacks by Putin's forces didn't even spare schools. Plumes of smoke were seen emerging from a school that lies in ruins and totally devastated. Another badly hit city, Mariupol, has bodies lying on the streets. Target of multiple daily attacks, the city witnessed massive strike on a drama theatre where hundreds of civilians had taken shelter. The sprawling building was reduced to a pile of debris with hundreds trapped. As the Russian army advances towards the capital, attacks on Kyiv's suburbs continue. Residential buildings were seen on fire, with locals struggling to flee using destroyed bridges. Casualties continue to rise.
The Russian state has become an outspoken terrorist, and it is not ashamed. But it will be responsible for everything. The world is already beginning to understand that without the recognition of Russia as a terrorist state, it will be impossible to restore justice for Ukraine. It will be impossible to restore international order.
Today, in other apartments building.
Boxing legend and Kyiv mayor Vitaly Klitschko didn't mince words, saying Russia is ruthlessly attacking civilians and not just military establishments.
Putin says he's only targeting military targets.
Bullshit. Sorry. Where is military target? This building is military target.
It's day 22 of the invasion, and Russia continues to attack cities, causing heavy damage. The city of Kharkiv continues to be worst hit. A market in Kharkiv was bombed, following which the fire raged on for hours, with smoke engulfing the nearby buildings as well.
Sviatslav Yurash, who was earlier seen taking up a gun against Russian forces, suffered a massive personal tragedy as he lost his girlfriend Alexandra in a Russian attack.
She will remain that voice which will be speaking to the world every single day from now on.
This hospital in Mariupol is the last one standing in the ruined city, with all others bombed out. Bodies are piling up as those doctors couldn't save are lined up in the basement, since the mortuary in the city is full to the brink. The bodies include those of infants who are grievously hurt. But the Ukrainians refuse to give up, inflicting significant damage on Russian military, targeting Russian tanks firing at shelters across the city of Mariupol. Ukrainian army also shot down a Russian chopper, valiantly fighting back and against insurmountable odds. With Rajesh Pawar and Seri Mirankov in Kyiv, Bureau Report, India Today.
Over the past 1 month, millions of people across the country have been watching every single minute of India Today's war dispatches from Ukraine. And so, joining me on the news track, back from the battlefield, are war heroes. I want to welcome Gaurav Sawant. Gaurav, welcome. Great to have you back. And we're so relieved that you're back, as is Geeta Mohan, our foreign affairs editor, video journalist Pawan, who was with Gaurav, Mohsin, who went with Shweta Singh and with Geeta, and they're back after spending the last several weeks in the battlefield. And as I said, a very young, very special guest, Vidushi, Gaurav's daughter, who's just very happy to be right next to her papa. Gaurav, to you first. First, everyone in the newsroom, mighty delighted and relieved that you're back. What's it like coming back after a month in the battlefield? I hope you're not missing the battlefield.
So I actually wanted to be there longer. You and I had that conversation,
but it's good to be back. It's actually great to be back. Great to be back to office, to Vidushi, to Aditi, to my parents, family here at work. It's great to be back, but it would have been great to be at the battlefield till the end.
Oh, sure. But none of this takes away from our commitment to covering this war. This is just to give all our viewers a sense of what the coverage was like. Geeta, you literally insisted, demanded that you be sent out to cover this war, and finally you were. And you did a fantastic job out and about covering the war. Describe some of your experiences.
Well, the biggest challenge, as we were speaking earlier also, Rahul, was to get your logistics right. You need, if you're in a conflict zone, if you're reporting alone, you need to get your logistics right. And in that, there were no interpreters. Drivers had fled home. So I had to drive my own vehicle, had to get my sources right, because if you're in the wrong hands, you'll land up in the wrong place. So I had to get my sources right, build confidence. So those were the bigger challenges. Once I had that in place, stories that were to be told, that should have been told, were told.
Shweta, one of your passions is to cover the army, and you spend a lot of time with men in uniform, but it's one thing to see them practice and the other to be in the middle of a real war.
And I'll tell you, they were more jealous. They used to, all my friends in the army used to send me messages every single day asking me what's the update and how is it like. So I completely agree with Gaurav that I would have loved to be there sooner, because Geeta and I were trying to get there the second visa, because Gaurav flew at a time when there was no war, and we knew we had to walk at a time when there was a war. Yeah. And there were air raid sirens going all over when you had no car, no shelter, just a rucksack, a backpack, and you're just walking into war zone. So I hope we did well. I think the company was, the group was very confident that we could do it. It's amazing to have such an opportunity to go to a land you don't speak the language in, to go to a place where there's a war going, to go to a place with, actually, you couldn't even carry your bulletproofs with you, and there was no bulletproof there.
And so many people have messaged or mailed or tweeted out to say that they were actually watching India Today's coverage rather than watching a CNN or BBC, despite this being an international story. And that just speaks volumes for the kind of effort that our team did. Pawan, this was your first war experience. So you haven't covered any particular hostile situation much more than, say, a riot, and here you were in the middle of a real war. How was it?
अच्छा एक्सपीरियंस रहा वहाँ जाके। आपको शूट भी करना है और आपको लोगों को भी देखना है, और वहाँ की जो पुलिस है, मिलिट्री है, उनको भी कन्विंस करना है कि एक तो वहाँ पे लैंग्वेज का बड़ा प्रॉब्लम होता था, तो हम लोगों को उनको कन्विंस करना होता था कि वी आर फ्रॉम इंडिया, वी आर जर्नलिस्ट। लेकिन ये सब कुछ देखते हुए आपको खुद का भी ध्यान रखना है, अपने को टीम का भी ध्यान रखना है कि आपको कैसे काम करना है। बॉम्बिंग हो रही है, शेलिंग हो रही है, सब तरफ का ध्यान रखते हुए आपको करना है। डर भी लग रहा था बीच बीच में, कई बार बहुत जगह पे डर लगा भी। गन पॉइंट पे उन्होंने हम लोगों को सर्च भी किया, टाइम भी लगा।
I was telling you that Pawan once had an instance where he had somebody cock a gun at his forehead. So a Kalashnikov on your forehead, that can't be कनपट्टी पे बंदूक रखी उन्होंने।
Absolutely, बहुत बार, जितनी बार इस टूर में मेरा पहला एक्सपीरियंस था, जितनी बार मैं इस टूर पे इस एक्सपीरियंस मैंने लिया है, घुटनों में बैठने का मैंने किसी और जगह पे नहीं लिया है। कि हर जगह पे मतलब वहाँ पे एक्चुअली क्या होता था कि मैं कैमरे पे रहता था, तो उनको लगता था कि हम लोग कुछ शूट करके कोई ट्रांसमिट ना कर दे, कुछ चेक पोस्ट ना दिखा दे, तो उनको वो लोग वहाँ पे हम लोगों को देखते थे, हमारा कैमरा देखते थे, विजुअल्स क्या लिए हैं आप लोगों ने, वो सब चीज़ों को वो लोग देखते थे। जब उनको एक बार कन्विंस हो जाता था कि ये ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, तब जाके वो हम लोगों को छोड़ते थे।
Good, so you now have enough stories to tell your grandchildren and then spend all the time talking about what you've been doing on the battlefield.
अभी तक तो कुछ नहीं बताया, लेकिन अब शायद बताना पड़ेगा कि क्या क्या हुआ।
तो हो जाए।
नहीं, in years to come, सबको बता सकती कहानी है।
अभी नहीं बताया।
Mohan is one of our most talented video journalists, and he's been to different kinds of situations, covering different stories. And how was it, Mohan, being in the middle of a battlefield where you had air sirens going off every hour?
हम लोग एयरप्लेन में शूट कर रहे थे, तो जब श्वेता सामने है तो मैं इधर खड़ा हूँ, मेरे पीछे से फायरिंग हो रही है, तो मुझे इनको इशारे करना है कि थोड़ा सा इस तरफ से करते हैं। उसके बाद पीछे की तरफ एम्बुलेंसेज आ रही हैं जिसमें रेस्क्यू करके ला रहे हैं। अब हम 360 घूम रहे हैं, अब जब ये इधर आ गई हैं तो मेरे पीछे फायरिंग है, तो अब ये मुझे इशारा कर रही हैं कि थोड़ा सा इधर से शूट कर।
ये सब लाइव हो रहा है?
ये सब लाइव चल रहा था। हमने 2 घंटा लाइव किया था जब वो एयरप्लेन में शेलिंग हो रही थी और ब्रिज गिरा था। और फिर दूसरी चीज़ ये होती थी कि हम एक जगह गए जहाँ ट्रेनिंग चल रही थी सिविलियंस की, आर्मी ट्रेन कर रही थी।
देखी थी मैंने आपकी स्टोरी।
तो उसमें शूट करना है हमें, लेकिन वो बोलते हैं कि आपको लोकेशन नहीं दिखानी। उनके बैंड शूट करने हैं, बैंड चेंज हुए थे आर्मी के, येलो टू ब्लू, वो शूट करने हैं, लोकेशन दिखानी नहीं है, आपका एंकर भी खड़ा है, आपको इतना भी फ्रेम रखना है कि एंकर भी दिख जाए, वो भी दिख जाए, लोकेशन भी ना दिखे, फिर उनको फुटेज चेक करानी है। अब क्लिप मल्टीपल करनी पड़ती थी, सिंगल क्लिप है तो उसने बोला डिलीट करो, तो आपकी पूरी फुटेज गई। फिर फुटेज जाने के बाद सारा कार्ड फॉर्मेट करना है।
वो जिद करते थे क्या फॉर्मेट?
नहीं, वो जिद नहीं करते। हम आज आपने मुझे शूट करा दिया, आज कर लिया, कल को इनका शूट है, ये बोलेंगे कल ये कहाँ किया था, इसे तो पता ही नहीं कि मैं कौन हूँ। तो आपका किया, भेजा, ख़त्म, नेक्स्ट ब्लैंक कार्ड पे शूट होगा।
Gaurav, give everyone who's watching a sense of the situation on the battlefield, because we're seeing a lot of Ukrainian information warfare. We're seeing psyops from Russia. What really is happening on the ground? Is Russia genuinely making ingress? Are the Ukrainians actually being able to push back?
They are able to push back, but how long, Rahul, that remains a challenge. But when you look at the bigger picture, and we were privileged, I mean, we managed to get to Kharkiv, we went to Mariupol, we were reporting from Irpin and Bucha and Brovary. Now, since we were driving...
I don't think anybody else went out. Gaurav actually thought this is a good opportunity to see a beautiful country. So from Mariupol, which later got attacked, to coming back all the way to Kiev and then finally to Lviv. So you actually had a good Ukraine darshan.
Absolutely. And driving myself, that was the biggest advantage. If you can drive in Europe, you can do anything. That was one big advantage that we have. At times we relied on the Google map. Like when we were running out of Mariupol, we were shot at. Because, we filmed something, the Ukrainian army, or was it a militia, we do not know. Perhaps they didn't like it. And there we are...
You got fired at, right? I think that's when everyone got really scared.
Yeah.
In your vehicle, who was firing at you and why?
So, it was either the Ukrainian army or the militia, or maybe the Russians had come into that area. We saw a checkpoint. We dodged it. Rajesh was in the car with us, and Rajesh was filming on his mobile phone. And suddenly, in my rear side view mirror, and then you hear it. You see a gun cocked and tack, 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 5 rounds, one after the other. So instinctively, I just went zigzag, zigzag so that you dodge those bullets. And we were driving a beautiful SUV. So here was a lady who wanted to get out of Mariupol. Mariupol was being shelled. Her driver didn't show up. She met somebody at her hotel. We met another Indian contact, and that Indian contact said, will you drive her car? And we said, sure. I didn't even know what car. It's a left-hand drive car. And we had absolutely no idea. We just said, yes, we will. And we just dumped all our stuff. That lady dumped all her stuff. And we zipped past. And the roads were shut. They had trees on the road. So we went in the kacha. And then came out. And then they started firing at us. We dodged that. And then we drove non-stop 350 kilometers, anchoring 2 bulletins while we were driving. Because they were firing. And we didn't know whether we'd be able to get to that place. But we wanted to get the latest back. But we got to Dnipro safe. Dnipro is now under attack.
This is where a Fauji upbringing comes very handy.
Yes.
You're used to driving in the kacha and having convoys fired at. Geeta, give us a sense of the diplomatic state of play, because from what we can gather in the headlines, you've got Ukraine and Russia apparently close to some kind of a rapprochement. Is that for real?
So the Ukrainians say that there is no concept or idea of a neutral state as of now, because that would mean absolute political suicide for Zelensky. So Zelensky is in a very tough position right now, with the Russians closing in on Kyiv and the Russians wanting a regime change. Will he step down, or will he go in for a compromise? Because the NATO is not coming, European Union is not going to help them, and there's going to be no military intervention. So Ukrainians are left to defend themselves. And in that, they now need to decide whether if it is worth continuing this war or negotiating. So they are negotiating, but Putin is very clear. You negotiate, but there will be no ceasefire. ICJ ruling may be one of the reasons why...
But how can you negotiate when there's war going on?
It has been. They've been negotiating. The chief negotiator level talks were taking place when they attacked Kyiv. The foreign minister level talks were taking place when they destroyed Kharkiv and Mariupol. Then they are now looking at a president level talk. Let's see if that will come through. There is a second round of foreign minister level talks that may have some forward movement on...
This is all talk about military and diplomacy. Vidushi, what in the world was going through your head when your father was live, his car being fired at, or he's up and you're not being able to get through to him?
I think I mainly just missed him, and I wasn't too concerned because he'd done this sort of stuff before, but I just missed him, and that's all. I wasn't that worried.
You weren't worried? No. Oh, come on, you're just saying that.
Not that much.
Really?
Yeah.
Gaurav, it's good to be back home. with family, your wife, parents, daughter. I mean, she's also a Fauji grandchild, right? So she's just being brave. I promise you, anybody who says that they weren't scared, I doubt that would be true. Being anxious is really very, very natural. Okay, no, we don't want to get either of them to cry. That's not the idea at all. Shweta, you had...
My parents were so confident that we didn't even speak for a single day. Mohsin knows that. I didn't speak at home for a single day. They were sure I'll come back. It was super. Okay, so not an officer, but I'm a JCO's grandchild. He single-handedly brought me up, and I always wanted to join the army. The army doesn't have combat for women. Sad.
How is it in Ukraine? Because we saw a lot of those MPs actually pick up guns
Not
to want
just
to fight.
MPs, Gaurav. You've got Rahul. I always swap their names. So these women who were standing at pickets with false eyelashes, painted nails, and with an AK-47, and strong women. The other one who we interviewed, Geeta, her name was Aditi, incidentally, the Indian name. She had a Hindu name and a
nice.
Ukrainian name, Elena. So she was in the army and trained to fire an AK-47 at age 19. And she's an instructor now for the militia. She's an instructor for the territorial army, sorry.
Yes.
So the women there are lovely. They are into combat. And what I loved about Ukraine, because when you stay at a particular place, you tend to get an affinity with those people. You can be neutral as a journalist, but when you look at those people and their motivation, knowing fully well that you've got a huge army in front of you, Russia who's a superpower, and yet you're willing to fight, you're just taking a 3-day training and you're going there and you're saying that the Russians will have to be pushed back. I love that spirit, that they want to fight.
And this is amazing, Geeta, because what you have here are civilians coming together and saying we will fight, guns being distributed, and civilians who otherwise say are MPs or doctors, engineers, some were even cyber warriors from one of your story picking up guns.
Absolutely. So the determination that we saw of the civilians coming together, and there's age no bar. So we interviewed an 18-year-old kid and a senior citizen. When we were in Brovary, where attacks were taking place and we were in the trenches, there was a senior citizen.
Chernobyl guy.
Yes. There was a senior citizen there. So there's no bar to age, but again, Rahul, there's a flip side to it. Now, the very same people who have now been distributed AK-47s, if things settle down, you don't know who has guns, who is a part of a militia, a group or mafia, and if things go wrong, it could go very wrong in a civilian strife within the country. That's one major concern quite a few senior officials have in Ukraine.
Pawan, what was the most scary part of being out in Ukraine? सबसे ज़्यादा डर आपको कब लगा और क्यों?
सबसे ज़्यादा डर तब लगा जब हम लोग डिफेंस मिनिस्ट्री के पास से गुजर रहे थे. वहाँ पर मिलिट्री जो लोकल यूक्रेन की मिलिट्री थी, वो लोग हम लोग को दूर से उन्होंने बोल दिया था कि आप लोग वहीं रुक जाइए अपनी यूक्रेन लैंग्वेज. बट लकीली हमारे पास एक वहाँ पे उस टाइम पे एक इंटरप्रेटर साथ में थे, कॉल्ड एलेक्स नाम था उनका. उन्होंने उनसे बात करी और उन्होंने हमें बोला कि आप वहीं पे घुटने में बैठ जाइए, और उन्होंने जो है अपना गन को कॉक करके और हमारे पास आने लगा था. स्कैरी पार्ट तब था जब तक उन्होंने हमारे पे गन था नहीं, तब तक तो कुछ नहीं था. जब मैंने अपने लेफ्ट साइड पे देखा तो एक बॉडी पड़ी हुई थी वहाँ पर, तो मुझे उस टाइम पे बहुत डर लग गया था कि शायद हम लोगों को भी शायद वो गोली वोली ना चला दें, क्योंकि उनके लिए तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. वो तो सोचेंगे, वो ये सोच रहे हैं कि हम लोग जो है क्या शूट कर रहे हैं, क्या दिखाने जा रहे हैं. तो उनको कन्विंस करना बहुत प्रॉब्लम था. तो उसकी वजह से हम लोग को वहाँ पे मेरे को बहुत डर लगा. तो वो सबसे स्कैरी पार्ट हमारा वहाँ पे.
Mohsin, Ukraine is a beautiful country, but now ravaged by war. And how difficult is it to shoot these pictures of death, devastation, destruction?
हमने चलना शुरू किया इरपिन की तरफ, तो उधर शेलिंग हो रही थी. अब शेलिंग में हमें नहीं पता कि किस तरफ से हो रही है. लैंग्वेज उन्हें हमारी नहीं आती, हमें उनकी नहीं आती. तो एक से श्वेता ने कुछ पूछा, तो उसको भी कुछ नहीं समझ आ रहा था. तो वो बोला धूम, मतलब कि अगर एक आया तो उधर से आया, 3 आ रहे हैं तो वो आवाज़ गूंज रही थी हमारी तरफ से है. तो उधर 3 हो रहे थे. तो फिर जो हमें थोड़ा सा था, फिर हम आराम से चलने लगे कि नहीं ये इस तरफ से हो रहे हैं, तो आगे बढ़ते रहो. तो फिर आगे पहुँचे तो ब्रिज टूटा हुआ था. हम गौरव की पिक्चर देखते थे कि यार फिरंगी शूट करते हैं, हमने पहली बार ऐसा देखा है कुछ. फिर हमने भी शूट किया.
And there was a time when you were stuck in a train at night because that train was supposed to leave for Kiev, and for 14 hours with no air conditioning, you were stuck in the train?
So this was in Mariupol. Before we took this vehicle out, we had a ticket and we were supposed to take a train out. But they shelled the railway line or somewhere very close to the railway line. So the trains couldn't move. We were already sitting inside the train. So the engine driver and the conductor, they switched off all lights. Railway station, all lights switched off. Train, all lights switched off. And thousands of people locked inside a train. You can't get out, you can't do anything. And 13 hours we were inside that train, and there was shelling that was happening around in Mariupol, very close to the railway station, and ultimately that area was targeted. But we just sat there. Now the moment instinctively as a journalist you start recording, people around said your lights, they'll start shelling, and then you just had to sit there. So then you did the next best thing, you went off to sleep. So you had a good night's sleep.
Were you watching television? Were you plugged in, or were you in your own zone?
I was watching.
You were watching all the time?
Yeah.
Were you scared?
Nah.
Good.
That's amazing. This is a very, I don't know how people reflect on this, but this is a very Fauji thing, that you've got a member of your family out in the battlefield, and of course you're anxious and you're concerned, but you're not scared, and that is just truly testament to the spirit of being a Fauji bacha. Gaurav, just by association, she's born in a Fauji family, so she is in that sense of Fauji bacha and living up to being a Fauji bacha.
Absolutely. But you know what was very interesting, Rahul, something that we take away from this battle, that 1 month plus that we were there, is the spirit of the people of Ukraine to fight against all odds. They're getting the weapons, they're learning to fight. They may not agree with President Zelensky, but they're still fighting. A large number of...
Is Zelensky popular?
He was at one point of time very popular. And those who love him, the nationalists, they worship him. Including some who say that even though there are neo-Nazis or the Azov battalion, that they're there. So those elements are gung-ho about war. But there are those who are not gung-ho about war, but they too are standing up because they don't want somebody else to make the rules for them.
How did people in Ukraine respond to Zelensky? Because just before the war, he'd become a bit of an unpopular person because he seemed to be in denial and delusion. But he seems to have really rallied to the moment.
That's a very important question, Rahul, because this whole rallying behind the president started happening when Putin moved beyond Donbass. Till the time he confined himself to Donbass, which is a pro-Russia, Russian origin people kind of a area, it was okay. But till when he moved to Kharkiv, Mariupol and Kyiv, that's when the nationalism, of all the people started, they were more nationalistic than anyone else. And the support for President Zelensky was not just from the people, from opposition parties. Now, there is no opposition in Ukraine because everybody is rallying behind Zelensky. So his popularity has grown because of the war, but is it sustainable? Because a lot of people now are questioning, what were your assurances? And if you did not have assurances, why were you talking about joining NATO and European Union without having those assurances and taken an entire country to war? So these are only a few people who are asking these questions. Putin having invaded Ukraine is a huge mistake, because if Putin wanted Ukrainians to like him and wanted a regime change, that certainly is not happening with an invasion.
We had a lot of people, Shweta, asking us about where are they staying, what are they eating, how are they traveling, how safe are they? Give us a sense of what life was like in Ukraine.
Pretty okay, pretty, I wouldn't say completely comfortable.
अच्छे से बताइए.
So we had an Indian family to fall back on. At least we were assured of hot breakfast, soup and
you want to say a
bread.
big thank you to Kuldeep ji and his family. So thank you so
Yes.
much if you're watching in Ukraine at this time.
So they looked after us. And after that, we were out on the field. So it was a normal practice not to have lunch and just have dinner at night. But we were very lucky to have food. Very lucky to have food at a time when most of the people who were living there in Kyiv didn't have access to
regular meal.
hot meals.
तो खाने वाने को कुछ मिल रहा था पवन कि नहीं?
खाने को मिला, जब तक वॉर नहीं हुआ तब तक तो मिला था, लेकिन उसके बाद जब कंडीशन वॉर जैसी हो गई थी तो काफ़ी लोग वहाँ से जाने लगे, तो अब उस टाइम पे हमें प्रॉब्लम हुआ था काफ़ी. हम लोग रात को जैसे कभी चॉकलेट खा लिया हमने, कभी बिस्किट खा लिए, पानी नहीं मिल पा रहा था हमें.
नहीं, but when we were traveling, अभी refugee train, refugee bus, and the flight, the train was around 12 to 14 hours. Then the bus journey was also almost that time, and I think we didn't have any food except for chocolate and a bar of chocolate amongst all of us
and a
packet of chips amongst all of us for 2 days. 2 days, vrat samajh kar kiya.
For nearly 24 days, India Today's team of reporters and video journalists, Gaurav, Sawant, Geeta, Mohan, Shweta Singh, Pawan Kumar, Mohsin Khan were in the war zone. From shelling to missile attacks to air raids, India Today's team reported from the front lines, from the trenches. When the capital of Kiev was under siege, Gaurav and his camera person Pawan were there. Here's what they saw.
Away from this area, we are being told to leave this area because it's not safe to be here. You can hear some blasts that are taking place in this area.
The bombs fell dangerously close. There was smell of explosives and fear in the air. But there was also the steely determination to fight, to defend Ukraine from Russian tanks and missiles.
So of course we are expecting enemies from some parts, and so of course they would like to make a circle around Kyiv, but so we are ready to meet him, and so our military forces they are very nice in protecting now, so they are firing all the techniques, all the tanks.
This is Irpin, and this is where a very fierce battle is currently taking.
India Today was on the ground for over a month. Before the conflict broke out on the February 24th, graduating scholars at the prestigious Taras Shevchenko University had taken a resolve to fight. We spoke to a number of budding lawyers graduating from the university.
Yeah, I want it to be sorted out by diplomatics, by lawyers, as it is not legally for Russia to go in Ukraine and just ask for some territory or some resources. But if they go to us, we will take actions. I think that everyone will not just leave country and go to Russia.
There was a steel in their voice. They may or may not have agreed with their president on joining the NATO, but they wanted to take their own decisions, and if it meant taking to the trenches, they did.
Images on your television screen now tell you more about the military movement that's taking place towards the battle zone. Now this is where one convoy after the other. We are on the high street here in Mariupol, and military convoy, one after the other, heading towards the front lines.
A Russian attack intensified and the rail track came in the line of fire. India Today team was stuck for over 13 hours, locked in a train.
कई घंटों से ये ट्रेन रेलवे स्टेशन पर ही है। 9 बजे ये ट्रेन खुलनी थी और अब कई घंटे हो गए हैं ये नहीं निकल रही।
With trains not moving, driving out of Mariupol amidst advancing Russian forces was the only way. India Today team came directly in the line of fire.
यहाँ पर कर्फ्यू है, हम लोग फिर भी सड़कों पर हैं, तो उन्होंने हमारे ऊपर हथियार तान के रखा है।
At another instance, the Ukrainian army put a gun to our head amidst fears of targeting of their checkpoints.
यहाँ बमबारी की भी आवाज रुक कर आ रही है।
Around the capital Kyiv, it was a story of destruction and ruin.
The broken bridge and broken lives. Now a desperate attempt being made to rescue senior citizens. Easier said than done. An effort is being made to rescue these people from this broken bridge. Now this place in the Bucha district in Irpin is directly in the line of Russian fire.
The suburbs of Kyiv were in ruins.
Ukrainian army is attempting to stop the advance of the Russian army, and look at the desperate measures. There is a train track. Goods trains have been parked in the middle of the road. This is a track that crosses this. Now, right now, vehicles can pass through this, but should the Russian advance be close, and there are red lines at every flag and red flags being put. The moment those red lines are breached, this track will be closed.
Robbery.
That is just phenomenal reportage from the ground. Takes serious guts, courage, determination to be out there in the face of such adversity and risk. Geeta, how do you think this is likely to end in the way that this battle is progressing and from all that we know at this moment?
Well, see, the winter months were important for Putin because this is the time for him to push. Europe will not push back, and that's what happened. But now it's time for negotiations because Putin will continue pushing unless and until Ukraine agrees to a few conditions. I don't think all of the conditions will be met with, but certainly some of them. Neutrality is one of them, and it's non-negotiable. Not joining NATO is non-negotiable for Putin. And that certainly is an area that can be one of the reasons why this war can come to an end. I do not think that recognizing the republics is something that Ukraine would agree to at this point in time. Crimea, maybe they'll give way to. So yeah, it is going to be a long process of negotiation before things come to an end.
I must tell our viewers that when our crew came back from Ukraine, our chairman and editor-in-chief Arun Puri declared 1 week holiday. He doesn't want to see them in office. So I hope, Gaurav, you have no plans. I can see Aditi, she's sitting there, she's waving, saying, yeah, I'm so happy that you're back. I hope you have no plans of wanting to go back, or you won't be filling up requisitions. Please send me back.
So I take a week off since that's an instruction. And we take this 1 week off. I'm taking Aditi and Vidushi out. The moment we come back, I'm coming to you to send me back to Ukraine.
I must tell you that Aditi is sitting there. She'll cock her Kalashnikov and aim straight at your head. And the Ukrainians, they have let you go, but Aditi will kill you. And Vidushi is sitting next to you. Are you okay with him going back again?
I think I really like Vidushi.
Yeah.
She's a brave girl and very honest about how she feels and thinks.
Pawan, your mom was very anxious about you being away, and she must have been very relieved that you are back home safe and sound.
Yes, बिल्कुल. अभी आने के बाद उनको काफ़ी अच्छा लग रहा है. अब वो ठीक हैं. अभी एयरपोर्ट में आए थे तो काफ़ी इमोशनल हो गए थे.
एयरपोर्ट में आए थे? सब आए थे. ऐसा वेलकम मिला पवन को.
और वो उस टाइम एक वो इमोशनल मोमेंट था. वो रो भी गई थी कि इतने दिन तक दूर थे, इनकी थोड़ा सा तबीयत.
लड़ाई तो नहीं थी आपकी गौरव से वहाँ पे?
नहीं लड़ाई नहीं. वो तो
सच बता दो, वैसा भी क्या छिपाना.
नहीं चलता रहता है. कहीं महीने बोला था इनको कि यहाँ पे मत करो, लेकिन ये नहीं करना है. ये पर यहीं से करके चलेंगे. चलिए फिर फंसेंगे तो दोनों ही फंसेंगे वहाँ पे. जब लगेगी गोली तो दोनों को लगेगी. तो ये करके करते थे वहाँ पे.
आपकी लड़ाई हुई मोहसिन श्वेता से या गीता से?
मैं लड़ता ही नहीं किसी से.
अच्छा, हम लोग तो अपनी तरफ से लड़ ही रहते. नहीं, लड़ने के लिए सिर्फ दो सेनाएं काफ़ी थी. ये मुझे लगता है कि why we succeeded was because we were a wonderful team.
Yes.
There was no competition, we were just complementing each other.
And that's fantastic. And as I said, our eyes still very closely focused on what's happening in Ukraine. Our thoughts and prayers with the people of Ukraine. And we'll keep tracking. Our crew may be back, but we've got Rajesh Pawar and so many other contributors. Plus, you've just heard Gaurav, Geeta, Shweta. Everyone's still itching to get back, as is our entire bureau that's been getting their Schengen visas and attempting Ukrainian visas. And that's just one of the phenomenal things about being a reporter, that no matter how crazy it may seem from the outside, you just want to be where the action is. And that's the spirit of a true reporter, which you saw manifest itself in the fantastic coverage that Shweta, Gaurav, Geeta, Pawan and Mosin put out. So thank you so much. And Vidushi, thank you for being such a strong member of our family, and for being supportive and saying that you're okay with your father being where he was and you're happy to send him again. That is truly incredible. So thank you. Aditi, Gaurav may have a different view on this. She's waiting for you. So all the best, and wish all of you and those who are watching at this time a very, very happy Holi. They've come in just in time for Holi, but we're also hoping the war in Ukraine ends and that peace is restored, and hopefully the negotiations that Geeta was speaking about will come to fruition. I wish you all a very, very happy Holi. You've earned your week-long break, so enjoy it. And don't be in any rush to go back. I'll have more for you on the other side. Stay with us. Rahul Kanwal.
23 years of experience.
5 conflicts covered. Unmatched time in war zone. The first embedded operation in the history of Indian television journalism. Gaurav Sawant. 28 years of reporting. 8 conflicts covered. Unmatched hours in conflict areas.
Actual firing is taking place. The grads are firing.
Shivarur. 19 years of reporting. 5 conflicts covered. Unmatched view of international crossfires.
And the Attack guns are firing away.
Geeta Mohan. 18 years of reporting. 3 conflicts covered. When the world is at war, there is no compromise on India today.
Russia has made an offer which India just can't refuse. They've offered crude oil to India at discounted rates, which will help reduce fuel prices in India. But news of this deal reached the White House as well.
India could take up the Russian offer of discounted crude oil. What would be your message to India or any other country?
Our message to any country continues to be that obviously abide by the sanctions, but that we have put in place and recommended. I don't believe this would be violating that.
While the US agreed that India will not be flouting any of its sanctions by entering into a deal with Russia,